Thank you to all of you for our closing night film.
Thank you.
Michael, I wanted to start. I know the film has been decades in the making, but even before you thought about making a film, can you tell us about your first encounter with Ferrari, the cars, Enzo Ferrari? When did you first learn about him? When did you first become interested in Ferraris?
There's something magical about them because, which I think comes from the following. I think in 1947, when he made his first car, in 1948, there used to be nothing as useless as last year's race car. They literally melted them down for the metal. And then I think he had the idea that, wait a minute, what if I paint it, put some good leather work in it, and find somebody foolish enough to buy this thing? And he did, and that's how he started selling them. So the early passenger Ferraris are full-on race engines, but need to be driven exactly that way, or the valves coke up and everything else, and that became the passenger vehicle. So I think that actually were an afterthought. So the point is that there's a fusion of cutting-edge technology and in these cars that's still there today, and maybe that explains it. But because a Ferrari is a Ferrari, that doesn't mean you go make a movie about it. So it was strictly the screenplay. Troy Kenny Martin's screenplay that Sidney Pollack and I first developed, and it held the power because this highly melodramatic, unusual story with these absolutely, I think, unique characters inhabited and embodied by this fantastic cast are so unusual, and this compression into this 3 months of 1957, all of which is accurate.
Do you remember when you first saw a Ferrari?
Yeah, I was on Brompton Road in London in the rain, a student living on about 5 pounds a week, and this blue kind of piece of moving sculpture showed up, and it was a 275 GTB 4-cam, and it was like a revelation. It belonged in a museum, and there are like 5 or 6 Ferraris in the Museum of Modern Art. And I was kind of stunned by it. I really didn't know exactly what it was. But
I wanted to bring, I'm really happy that all the actors are here with us, and I maybe wanted to bring them in to say a little bit about this question about what it means to play a real life figure. What do you think is there a particular responsibility when it comes to portraying an actual figure? What are the keys? Is physical likeness important or psychological? And where do you get those details? What is the research process like? If maybe all of you could say a little bit about your roles.
Yeah, I think all of it's important until it gets in the way of the script. And then there's lots of different versions of Ferrari. People in the factory had a different version than Piero did, and surely his competitors. Everyone had their version, but we were sticking to Michael's version and what Troy Kennedy Martin written the script, and so that's what we were going for. And of course, with Michael, you're given an incredible amount of information, and the mindset of a racer was something that we talked about initially. Of how do you make someone a duck? Who is calm on the surface and furiously paddling underneath, and when we were racing before we started in pre-production, it's very clear that there's this prolonged myopic focus that needs to be sustained until the race is over, and you're constantly dealing with what's happening in the moment, which is very similar to acting. It's all about everything else is kind of dissipates, and danger is on. Well, not as much danger as acting. There's catering, but with a race, there's always potential danger, and that's how we decided to characterize him moving forward. Is there a potential pitfall with Lena being discovered? Is the business going under? The new age of television, but how does he stay focused and completely present and in control? So it's all helpful. And then you take the pieces that open your imagination, and then you disregard the things that don't.
Penelope.
Yeah, I feel for sure there is an extra amount of responsibility when you are playing somebody that is real. I've had to do it twice in my life, and I felt that way, and I really got to care very much about what the people that knew that woman were gonna feel when they saw the result, instead of like, that becomes your focus, and it's not about like physically looking like her, but there has to be an essence, and an essence that represents that person. And I was very lucky because I had a lot of time in Modena with Michael, where he introduced me to a lot of people that knew Laura very well. And especially getting to spend time with the doctor that Enzo and Laura shared, who became very, very close to them. And he shared with me a lot of love letters. And that was, you know, letters that were not published anywhere. And that explained to me, I got to understand so much better who she was and what this relationship was about. So yeah, it feels like a big responsibility. It is, and you want to honor that person. You don't have to even like them. You don't have to be like them, think like them, but you have to honor something that was real.
Shailene?
I mean, you put it perfectly. I echo everything you just said. I think for me, playing Lena, there's not a lot of information about her available because she was sort of this hidden figure in Enzo's life and in Piero's life. And a lot of the inspiration for me outside of the conversations that Michael and I had came from Piero himself, just describing what his relationship was like with his mom and how he remembers she was the only woman that Enzo was ever around, and other family members of her also had the same account, that he would unbutton his suit and take his shirt off and just be relaxed. And I thought that that was a really interesting thing, and Michael and I spoke a lot about that and leaned into that. But I think especially a film like this, where Ferrari is such an institution of Italy, we're all so hyper aware of that honor that you spoke of, and just wanting to make sure that the family members of these people, when they watched this movie, felt the essence of them and felt that there was a deep amount of respect that we were giving them, despite the creative license that we had to create these characters.
For me, we didn't have much material about the protagonist, but when I was talking to Michael, we were trying to find the passion he had for adrenaline, for adventure, and he's remembered for the terrible crash he had, and it was the last milli because of the crash. But still, I think the last bit before the crash really represents him, when he's fully connected with the car and he's totally feeling joyful, feeling a lot of joy about that moment. So yeah, I think it's on a movie what we wanted to bring to the audience about the protagonist.
So it sounds like Piero Ferrari was quite involved in the production.
He wasn't so much involved in the production as being around for us ahead of time. I mean, I've known him for like 20 years through my meeting him at about the same time I met my good friend Gianluigi Buttoni, who may be here, the strength of that relationship, where I and the cast were the beneficiary of his trust in moving, answering questions about your life with your mother when you were alone, when you wanted your desire to have your father be present, what the house was like, and then a lot of things about his father which were unique. And Adam and I spent time in Enzo's study, in the apartment in that house. You see, the house that we characterize as Enzo's house is Enzo's house. That is the Storky Opera next door. The mausoleum is the family mausoleum, and so it's all the small details that composite into character when actors like Adam and Penelope and Shailene and Gabriel, and we pick up things, the handwriting in his diaries, the perfection of it, all had to do with the work he does as an engineer, which was precise and almost very rational. And then you have this other life, which is his personal life, which is libidinous, chaotic, and has absolutely no navigation. And I don't think he perceived any of that as a contradiction. And that became terribly interesting to us, and the circumstances of Enzo with Lara, the hostility between them, the attraction between them, the love letters that Penelope refers to, were actually written in 75 and 76, long after they had effectively separated. And there's a picture from the late 70s in Piero's apartment of Enzo 20 years after the event is here, sitting smoking a cigarette next to Lena, and you see right in their eyes the rapport that how these two people belong together. So all of this is it's all value, it's all invested in what everybody here did.
Can you say a little bit about the feats of engineering that you had to actually do in terms of recreating these cars?
We had to replicate the cars, and we 3D scanned actual cars built in a CAD computer, those shells with a contemporary drive chain and chassis and they were hand-beaten aluminum by a company called Campana and Modena, the famous Maserati restorers. And except for the Maserati that Beirad drives in the beginning, that single-seater, that's Nick Mason's car. That's an actual car, and he races it in historical races. Yeah.
Did you all get? I mean, I know Gabriel did, but how many of you got to actually drive the cars?
Which cars? In the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the ones that were recreated.
One.
Okay.
I sat in one with Adam as
sat.
a co-pilot, but the car never moved. We just wanted the experience of sitting there.
It was a drive-in. It was a McDonald's in Modena. Apart from that, no.
I think the racing scenes are extraordinary in the film. Just I think what's remarkable is the film gets across the thrill and the excitement and the obsessiveness, but also the horror and the danger. I think Adam earlier today you were saying you were calling them like moving coffins. So I'm just wondering about the decisions to sort of have these sort of both aspects so vividly represented in the film. I mean, the thrill of it, but also the crash, which is horrific.
First of all, I think I wanted to treat them with a lot of respect to the authenticity of what actually happened. And when we scouted the actual house by the road where in Guidazola, where the crash actually happened, we were standing there, and an old man came out of the house, and that's what we were doing in Italian, and I heard all this through translation. And then he said, "Oh, I was there, and I was there at the crash." And then what he recounted was that he was 3 years old, and his family was having dinner. Neighbors clocked in because the first cars were coming. His older brother was about 6 years older than him and ran out to see the cars. He ran. His older brother got killed, and so that's what inspired the idea of the family, cutting away the family and how they were staged. But basically, to treat it authentically, there's footage of a horrendous crash in Le Mans in 1955, and the simplicity of it is both just one camera movement, just seeing it in one shot without being tricky, without being cinematic, without loading it up with a bunch of devices. just felt to me that to see almost indexically that that's the proper way to see, what happened, and then we also dug into some forensic files, and that's characterized what happened to Deportago.
Something you said earlier, I wanted to just come back to, which is this: the film really is only set over a 3-month period, but we really get a full sense of the man and his contradictions. And I'm wondering if maybe Adam, you can say a little bit about just developing this character and how much you wanted to know about what came before and also after. And then I'm also curious to hear from both Penelope and Shailene, because I think you learn a lot about Enzo through his relationships with others, and I think the women are really important in the film, both Laura and Lena, and also his mother. So, just about Enzo beyond the 3 months.
Before the 3-month.
Was the Enzo before and after important?
I didn't think anything about it after. Okay? My movie's over at the end, and I don't think about him anymore. And I don't know what happens to him afterwards, because he only exists in the thing. Before we talked about that a lot. There was specifically an image that Michael and I really attached himself to, I guess injected into my DNA this idea that when he was young he had lost his brother and his father, and there was a particular point in his life where he kind of romantically was alone after he got what he makes reference to in the movie, and Agnelli didn't hire him at Fiat, and he kind of romantically said, "Who do I want to be in this world?" Bawling, and that kind of that image stuck as kind of a motivator for the things that we were shooting, kind of a driving undercurrent. But then also, just the Dino's death and how much it fractured their relationship was a huge motivator also. And then also this idea of, again, what I was saying earlier, the mentality of a racer of, again, this is all pre-psychology, so he hasn't really sat down with Laura and evaluated a proper way to grieve. They're just moving forward and acting on impulse, and not it takes a kind of cataclysmic event for them to start to process it in front of people, and hopefully you see that. So in that sense, yes, but again, it's the script and how the relationships are different with the different women in his life. And as Shailene was saying, we talked a lot about when he's with Lena, it's his most at ease, and when it's with Laura, it's his most businesslike, and who he feels he needs to represent to the factory is another person. So that was a strength of the script and Michael's direction.
Penelope, I was wondering if you could say a little. I mean, you talked about the letters that were kind of an important key to you, and I'm wondering what else did you draw on to shape this character, who I think really comes alive in this performance. I mean, it's such an intense performance on your part.
So, spending time with people there that either had met them or really knew them, or their parents really knew them. So I started to take it personal and really being bothered by the fact that when I asked about Laura, all the answers I got were about Laura being difficult, Laura being crazy. She didn't do anything for the company. What are you talking about? And in those times, and a woman, and crazy as she was. So I started to get it like really, really personal, a need for revenge for that. And I realized that Michael was doing the same thing in a way that was so much stronger than I knew at the beginning, because it is in the script, but I think it is 10 times more in the movie that he has made, and that was his intention, and he was not talking to me about it, like we will do justice to this character and this woman, and in a way an homage to all the women that still in so many places around the world have a very similar life and are hiding or forced to hide. And she was really important to him for obvious reasons. It was not just the love and the pain that they shared for their son, that she was also important for building this together. It was also hers. She was one of the first investors in the company. She sold like a little jewel and some things that she had and did this, created this together with him. So the more I knew about her and about how much she had to fight and suffer and how ignored she was, the more I had this need of let's tell her story, really. And I'm very grateful to Michael for wanting to do that in such a beautiful way and for giving me the opportunity to play her.
All right, we are out of time, but I want to thank all of you for this
right,
wonderful
thank you.
film.